right now you only have a certain amount of time. So you might as well use every minute you can doing what you set out to do, as opposed to trying to make an excuse for not doing it. And that could be in real estate. Like you said, it could be anything you want. And there's nothing that's holding anybody back. I truly believe that you can do anything. And maybe it's a flaw of mine. I think I can do anything better than the next person doing it if I wanted to do it. But anyone out there, male, female, anyone can do anything they want to do if they put the time and effort into doing it. You just got to do it.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik, and with me, as always, is John Cohen. How we doing?
We're doing good. The nap schedule for my daughter has changed from 2 naps to 1 nap. Ooh. So this first week of transition has been long. Yes. She screams for an hour straight, and she won't let go of either myself or my wife. But the first day I was like, oh, this is great, right? Because we have like, a 3-hour period where we could like be ourselves again, like no taking care of a baby, she's sleeping. But it's been funny. I don't know if you guys could hear it, but she's been screaming for the last hour. So thank God for the mics. It keeps that stuff down. But no, we're good. I got no complaints. I actually get a little bit more sleep because I don't have to wait. She's not waking up as early. So, but other than that, with everything else going on in the world, that's the least of my complaints.
That's good. That's interesting. I know she's been doing that a while and you've been enjoying it. So, and I know she's been overall very good. So it's actually, kind of the evil side of me. Nice to hear that she's not as much of an angel as sometimes you say. So I'm sure there's a lot of your friends out there who are parents who've been very jealous of you, who now feel like it's time to pay the piper a little bit.
You're not the only one. My mom says it all the time, thank God you finally got someone like yourself. I'm like, but why? Why do we have to do that? But no, it's been good.
No, that's awesome. Glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear she's doing well, and hopefully you guys can transition into the new phase pretty soon. It doesn't eat you away. So that's awesome to hear. But let's jump into today's episode. I think we are going to have a very great guest on today. I think he's going to give us a ton of insights and experiences that I don't know a ton of people have had. And I think he's got a way of communicating that's going to help people really understand what's going on, very raw and authentic. So happy to have him on, happy to hear his story, and happy to have a conversation with him. So with that being said, Damion, thanks for coming on, bud.
Hey, man. Good to see you guys. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to kick us off a couple minutes, just, tell people who you are, where you're from, and just kind of your journey and what you do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the guy that screws everything up faster and more frequently than everybody else in the business and investing world.
You don't know us.
Man, let's go. Let's like throw down here right now.
Gloves on.
I started doing my screw ups when I was growing up in Alaska. I started my first business at 11, and I left there kind of just to jump from 11 to about 18. I left there when I was working in the Arctic Circle, washing dishes, thinking I was on top of the world, which I kind of was actually, because I was in the Arctic Circle, and I was dodging polar bears because taking out the trash is part of my job. There are polar bears in the Arctic Circle. And so most people that are afraid of making mistakes, I go, what are you afraid of? And they go, well, something could happen. I'm like, trust me, you're not going to be eaten. I could be eaten when I was leaving my job, because if I didn't see the polar bear, that polar bear would eat my ass. And so, I ended up leaving there, went to Arizona. So it was 80 below zero with polar bears to 70 above. And that was in 2 days. So talk about shock. And then I just started doing things and disrupting. I got thrown out of college a couple of times, one for starting a bookstore and putting the other one out of business. And then I ended up charging my first rental house on a credit card. So I did basically everything as part of my story. The 50 companies I've started, all the real estate, it's all unorthodox. There is no playbook except for my life story. It's just, I kind of made it up. And I just, there was a lot of my time that I spent trying to prove that I was not an idiot or a loser because I didn't do the traditional route. And at some point that switched and the story unfolded, and it shifted from trying to prove something to other people to really living up to potential. And that took me building a $20 million portfolio and then losing it all in 2008 and then recreating it over 5 years. So that's it in a nutshell. Like it's a crazy, twisted, non-linear type of adventure. And, I'm still kicking. I'm not dead. So apparently it doesn't kill you if you make lots of mistakes, because I've made most of them.
I think that, you know, you got to learn from your wins and you got to learn from your mistakes. And if you make the same mistake 3, 4, 5 times, totally different issue. But you still can do that and come out the other end. But when mistakes aren't the end of the world. I mean, that's just, how I feel. We've made them. Everyone's made them. If they tell you they haven't, they're lying, or they just haven't done enough business. But awesome story.
Thanks. I think that's actually, we tend to, like, success is a terrible teacher. Failures are where we learn, because the pain, the scar tissue actually sits there and it becomes part of the DNA. And so when I hear what you just said, when somebody says, well, I've never lost money on a deal, I'm like, either you're lying or you haven't done very many deals, or you're about to get clobbered. So I definitely don't want to invest in you if you've never had any type of blood or mud all over you. Like, that's a no-win situation. So yeah, I'm totally with you guys.
So talk to me a little bit about, because I think this is something that's interesting to me, and I think a lot of people as well. How does somebody who hasn't really maybe experienced a lot of failure, or is, deathly afraid of failing, how do they start to accept failure, do things with, the probability that they will fail? How do they gain the understanding that, failure is not the end, and just kind of move forward from that?
Well, we can all talk about the ideas. I mean, one of the things that I learned from a friend of mine, who many of you guys know, Robert Kiyosaki, when we were teaching a couple of years ago, we were talking about wealth, and he said that wealth lies in the experiences that you have when you go through things, when you do things. It's not about cash or cash flow or assets. That has nothing to do with it. And I was like, wow, that's really good. And I just realized, man, I'm like the richest man in Babylon here. Like, I am full of wealth because I have effed up everything. And one of the valuable things is to be around people that encourage it and condone it. They're like, hey, go screw something up, and then support you through the process. The problem is most of us have environments of friends and family who don't want to see us in pain. So they discourage us from going out and doing things. Ooh, that seems risky. Ooh, stick in the stock market. Ooh, that's a good idea. And I go, man, you love me so much, you hate me. Like, what is wrong with you? So how do we fix that? I can tell you that mistakes are amazing, but you're going to be like, nah, it's too painful because I'm afraid. What do? Physically, you go to other people, you create different environments that you'll start adapting to and becoming. And if you have different environments of people that are making mistakes, that are supporting you in that journey, you're naturally going to do them without having to talk yourself into it. So it's really shifting your environment. That is the key, I think, for most people to be able to shift.
So I think that is the best way to put it. Because the way I tell people that story, I tell people, hey, listen, the worst thing that's going to happen, you're going to lose your fucking money, right? You put 20 grand into something, you're going to lose it, right? Okay, it can get bad with foreclosures and stuff like that. I get it. Probably not going to happen if you educate yourself a little bit, but the way you break it down is a lot nicer. I said, listen, the best thing you can do is invest 20 grand and lose the money, because you're either realizing, wow, I can't do that again, or you're going to build a foundation of what not to do and be more successful. But I agree 100%. I joke around my parents all the time, like, why didn't you teach? You guys were so encouraging and you were so supportive. I'm sure fat and bald. I was never going to play for the Yankees. Like, you should have told me that, or you should have ingrained it in my head when I was younger, because, they were so supportive of my dream of playing baseball that, they did anything they could for me. But inevitably, it's very hard to play at that level. But if they would have taught me about real estate or, buying properties, I would have started a little bit younger. But no, I agree. Sometimes you got to get out of that element of support and into, a community, a podcast, a Facebook group, a different environment with people and networking to really break you out of that comfort zone of don't make a mistake.
Well, and our system is creating a bunch of snowflakes, people that are just literally pussies. Like, I think, unfortunately, a lot of parents are trying to keep their kids safe, and they're creating very weak human beings by coddling them. And so, to your point about, go do something with $20,000, you're going to learn. And the most dangerous thing that I'm seeing is people will show up sometimes, and I've had this happen a number of times. One couple in it, for example, came to me about 6 years ago, and they said, we want help with our money. I said, well, what can I do? And they said, well, we've got about $2 million. We're 52, 53 years old, and we don't want to be on the Wall Street roller coaster. I'm like, okay. The problem is they had no muscle. They're like Pee Wee Herman. They had no muscle around their finances or money. They just accidentally had a couple $1 million because of their house that they had grown. It had increased in value over 10 years. and that and some money that they happen to have in a bull market that did fairly well. So the problem is not that, I mean, the biggest problem was they hadn't actually gone out and lost $20,000. And so they were in the age of, oh my gosh, I don't have time to lose it and make it back because it took them 30 plus years to make it. You go lose $20,000. I've lost all my money 3 times and nobody died. And I've had foreclosures. Okay, it sucks. You can't even qualify for a toaster oven for a year. Okay, I get it. Like, it's not fun when you call your father when you're 30 years old, hey, can you sign on a lease for an apartment with me after you've been a multimillionaire? Trust me, these things, like, you want to talk about swallowing your pride. Like, it happens. And yet here we are, back on the other side of that because I was willing to go through. And now there's wisdom. Wisdom is not something you get in a book. It's because you've gone through hell and you kept going. Like Winston Churchill said, just if you find yourself in hell, keep going. And so that's the whole process of failing. Failing is magic. It's truly the most precious thing that we avoid for no good reason other than to soothe our ego and our pride and to make everybody else comfortable around us.
So can you talk a little bit about more? Because I think so many people are afraid of losing money because they think, I can fail in other ways, but I need that financial security to be free or live the life I want. Can you talk through one of those instances in a little bit more detail of, where you got to, how it fell apart, how, what your life was like, how you were able to adapt, and then how you were able to then get back up to whatever point?
This is going to be like a 14-part novel. I mean,
that's fine.
We're going to. So, when I started, like I mentioned, where I went out and I used a credit card to buy a house, and then I just like brute forced it. So I read a book years later called Power versus Force. Much better philosophy. There's a lot of power when you actually understand different energies around trust and love and enlightenment versus fear and pain and manipulation, which is a lot of force. So I just did a lot of everything. I had power and force. I was buying a lot of stuff. And the problem with that whole process was that it was my ego, because it was about more. More was better in my mind. And what I learned in that process was that $1 million was interesting, but a multi-million-dollar balance sheet was better. And then after that, it's like, well, how about 5? And then you keep building it. And so I kept doing this. And the problem is I didn't really have any underlying mission. There was nothing about, there wasn't, something that was pulling me. We all need a North Star. Sometimes that starts off with our family. like John, you mentioned, your child. Well, that is a very powerful North Star. You want to protect your family. You want to provide for your family. And it's God. I think for all of us, there needs to be something even beyond that, that's bigger than just our internal circle. Because, hey, look, kids leave. So then what are you going to do? I see a lot of people are like, oh, now what do I do with my life? And so having something drive you, it's also, I remember this with my father. It was always a little depressing because he had so much potential and he didn't tap into it. He played it safe. He played not to lose. And we know what happens with any team, Yankees or anybody else, plays not to lose. We watch them lose. And people are playing this defensive way in their lives. And I've been through, I feel like I've been through everything. There's lots more that I'm going to go through. But, building real estate, doing developments, having investors, losing properties, losing investor money, all these things. The difference now is that, and people go, why if I lose my money, then it's the end of the world. Well, I've created millions of dollars out of thin air in my mind and literally had it show up in bank accounts. And that's not the secret talking. That's literally because I said, well, I'm going to create something. I'm using my mind to create wealth. And I've done that. I mean, here's a good example. I bought a house. Somebody gave me a house. And then I said, okay, I'm going to finance it to somebody else. And so I created the value. I created equity, $25,000. And somebody wrote me a $25,000 check for their deposit, their down payment. Literally happened in a matter of 2 days. So when we're afraid of losing 20,000, we just don't understand that we can actually create 20,000 in a minute or a day or a week. We think that we're very attached to the time for money approach. We've been trained for this. And so we get attached to, if I lose 20,000, I'm losing 4 years of my life. So that's why we get so wound up about it. When you realize you can create it, when you realize you can go do real estate or start a business with other people's money and other people's stuff, their experiences and their time, you start to realize, wow, then all I need is my own effort, my own focus. That's the power. And you don't get that unless you actually go through stuff. Like, you're not going to read a book and just get that. So you have to be willing to go and take a step into the place of scars. And you know what? It's like when you fall off your bike. Yeah, it hurts. You get punched in the face. Like, I do a lot of martial arts, and nobody like says, okay, I want to go get punched in the face until you realize that maybe getting punched in the face will help you get over the fear. And you realize, wow, okay, that's, it stunned me, but I'm not dead. And it changes you. You get to the point where you can absorb it, and then you keep moving versus being paralyzed. Paralyzed is the ultimate failure that I think we should be more worried about, is not doing anything.
It's interesting you said that, because I have one of my best friends. He does boxing, him and his brother. And one of the things he said to me once that basically was like, a lot of people don't realize they can take a punch until they've actually taken a punch. And he wasn't being philosophical. He was just talking about boxing. We were probably a couple of drinks deep, but it's interesting to hear that, because if you've never been punched in the face or kicked in the teeth, you don't understand that, you probably, you may not get knocked out. And even if you get knocked out, you can get back up and fight another day. So it's really interesting to hear you say that, and in several different areas. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. How does somebody then create that environment? Obviously you go out, you find people, stuff like that. How do you then start to, I guess, most people don't just jump in head first, right? How do you then start to create that environment where you can dip your toe in the water, start to experience those things without just saying, hey, I'm going to risk it all and just go, full board? Or is that just a leap you have to take?
It happens naturally depending on your environment. Either it's going to seem like you're a crazy person if you're the only one doing it, or it's going to seem natural and normal if you're around people that are doing it. One of the great stories that I heard was when Mark Victor Hansen was talking to Tony Robbins years ago. This is before Chicken Soup had sold 1 billion copies or whatever it's at now. And Mark was like, he's a millionaire. They'd sold lots of copies. And he was talking to Tony Robbins, and he said, I need to figure out what's like my problem. Like you've made hundreds of millions of dollars. And Tony goes, well, do you have a mastermind? Like who's around you? And he goes, yeah, man, I got mastermind. I got millionaires in there. And like I've sold millions of copies of my book. Tony goes, that's your problem. And he said, what do you mean? And Tony said, I have billionaires in my mastermind. And Mark goes, oh, because what's normal to a millionaire is totally not normal to a billionaire. And there's a reason that billionaires continue to do things that make more billions, that, they impact more people. It's the reason that certain people in politics tend to rise up and they keep growing, because that's just normalized to them. They're around other people that are influencers, and there's a different energy around it. So the question is, who is influencing you? And if you want to do things where, even if you're scared, what happens is you end up by osmosis, which is where you absorb stuff. You by osmosis, you absorb people's confidence. You kind of borrow it, not even knowing it. And it's like, oh, well, that's normal. And then we see, the thing is, we have the answers. We are our own guru. I think there's like a Netflix film with Tony Robbins in there, like, I am not your guru. We have the answers. Oftentimes we just don't know the questions, or we're too afraid to trust ourselves because we're like, oh, the boogeyman, that damn polar bear is going to jump out and eat our ass. So we get concerned about this when you got people around you and they're doing things. Like, I've had this happen when I lost all that money, the 20 million went away. I kind of went isolated into a cave. And at that point, it was just me and my thoughts. Very, very dangerous place to be in depression. And I didn't have other people that were doing things. So I thought the world was going to end. And I mean, this is 10, 12 years ago. And then we went into a bull market and I just watched, afraid. And it was because I didn't put myself around people that were doing things where I got to back to a normalized space of activity. And that is the easiest way to do it, because we all know how to go connect with people. So just choose wisely. Like, it's like Indiana Jones, choose wisely. Don't be a dummy. Like, actually choose the right people, because the wrong people will take you down. And even if that's flat, where they're keeping you where you're at, that's still down. Universe doesn't do flat. It does growing or dying. So if you're flatlining, you're just like staying static, you're basically dying. You're tiptoeing safely to death's door. Stupid move. That's not why you're here. So what's your environment? It's having all the difference in the world on your life.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think finding the right people to surround yourself with is so important. I know a lot of people who I was friendly with who were living very comfortable lives, and I think my mindset is very different to them because of getting into the real estate space, into the investment space, being surrounded with John, Don, the people in the office, and also, the countless people I've met through doing guest podcasts, our podcasts, and we did a meetup for 3+ years locally, which obviously has been put on hold for now. you just meet so many people from different walks of life and have slightly different views that have made it work and overcome so many different obstacles. You're just like, okay, there's literally 1,000 examples of 1,000 different type of people who have done it. It just gives you that kind of confidence and that foundation to be like, okay, like if them, why not me? And you just go, okay, now it's not a question of if, it's a question of how. And I think that that's a very different, powerful mindset that I've been able to, be exposed to earlier than I think a lot of people that I know of a similar age. So that's been super powerful for me. I know.
Well, and one of the things that the how is something that unfolds if you have a powerful enough why, and one of the most powerful whys is because if you don't, the alternative is regret. Regret is waking up on your last day and realizing you're about to meet the man or woman that you could have been.
Mm-hmm.
It's that experience. Hopefully everybody listening here goes, okay, I don't want to do that. I did do that with my dad a few weeks before he died. I remember him looking at me and saying, there were so many things that I wanted to do. And when you experience somebody's regret, it changes you. It
Mm-hmm.
like rewires you. And it's to me, it's a sin to not tap into your potential. And you're one of the things that I learned from Ted Turner. He talked about his dad. His dad accomplished his goals and then died. And it was like, okay, well, what happened? What happened is he didn't have a goal that was big enough. And so Ted said, okay, what's my goal? My goal is going to be something I can't possibly achieve in my lifetime. And it gives me something that pulls me versus, okay, I'm done. Well, here's the deal. The universe just says, okay, if you're done contributing, you're just consuming and you're taking up space and energy and resources. So you're out. That's why most men die within 3 years in the US when they retire. Stupid thing. Retiring, there's a difference between being free and not having to go and work for money and retiring and checking out and saying it's pina coladas and golf and that's all my life is. I don't think the universe wants us to be pina colada and golf people. Like that's not the entire point of our existence and our species. So what are you here for? And this is the why. The how, there's a million hows. Like there's anybody that says, well, I got to figure out that right thing. Who cares? Go make pencils. There's a billionaire I can show you that has made pencils. There are billionaires in real estate. They're like whatever level of wealth or whatever level of success or fulfillment you want, it's done in everything. It's not about that perfect how. People get stuck in that, trying to figure that out, and they spend years, wasting years. Doesn't really matter. The question is, are you going to be world class in that thing that you choose? Doesn't matter what you choose. Choose trees. Choose. I don't care. It's really fascinating how people get stuck. And you know why? Because it's safe. I'm working on it. I'm thinking about it. You're not doing crap. You're literally just in your head. And that's not making any progress. You're just swimming around in a circle like a damn fish in a globe. Like that doesn't, where are you going? Nowhere. But you're making progress.
Yep, that's what I said. Done is better than perfect, right? Like just do it. Because if you want to be perfect, that's just an excuse for not doing what you want to do. And yes, I understand that if you're trying to put the perfect pitch deck together with no mistakes, I get all that. But in the end, just putting something out there and getting punched in the face when the guy says, oh, look, you spelled this wrong. Okay, learn from that. But don't sit there and be like, oh, I want the perfect logo. Those are just excuses because you don't want to implement anything. You don't want to do it. You don't want to get up and go do what you want to do. So I'm a big believer in that. I mean, by all means, I'm a bull in a china closet sometimes. It's just, okay, maybe it wasn't the best way to do it, but you know what? I said it. If you don't like me, that's fine. I've said it on this podcast numerous times. I'm really not looking for friends. I have friends, right? I like people. I like to meet people. I like to network with people. But if someone doesn't like me because I did something or said something that wasn't right, well, you know what? I'll deal with I'll deal with it. It's not the end of the world. You know what? You got to deal with it too. And if that's going to offend you that much, I'm sorry, but you got to get up and do something. And like you said, if you want to put the perfect playbook together, go for it. But you're going to sit there spending numerous amount of hours basically just whittling away and wasting away. We had, and I apologize for getting the guess, but it was Ken Clothier who said, multiply this and how many hours. And then that's basically all the time you have left on this planet.
Oh, yeah.
Using the average age of 70, 73 years old or whatever it is for a male, subtract what you are today from that. And that's all the time you have left. And you can't create more time. So, and as that clock ticks, you don't want to regret. You don't want to have a goal that's too, it's a goal you could accomplish, right? There are goals that you have to set to accomplish, but there's also goals that you want to reach for. And you don't want to waste your time because you can't create more of it. It doesn't exist, at least today, maybe in the future, whatever. But right now, you only have a certain amount of time. So you might as well use every minute you can doing what you set out to do, as opposed to trying to make an excuse for not doing it. And that could be in real estate. Like you said, it could be anything you want. And there's nothing that's holding anybody back. I truly believe that you can do anything. And maybe it's a flaw of mine. I think I can do anything better than the next person doing it if I wanted to do it. But anyone out there, male, female, anyone can do anything they want to do if they put the time and effort into doing it. You just got to do it.
Well, and to your point about that, there's an interesting saying we've probably all heard, that it's lonely at the top. It's also, there's like no competition at the top. Like when you're world class, what most people do is they're spending time going shallow. They're not really going deep. They're not spending 10,000 hours on anything. And so they're fighting with all the other people that are lazy and not willing to commit. And so that's why it's such a struggle. When you get to a point where you dominate a space, it's really fascinating. The other thing that happens is people nip at you, but you're so busy on your thing. And it's funny to me. I've written a lot of, like, a dozen books, and every time I've written a book, I end up reading the book later. I'm like, I swear, how did I not catch this? And so when you publish a book, one of the things that's annoying is you have thousands of copies go out and you read it and you go, oh man, who did the proofing on this? And you realize you did, and so did 5 other people. And so you're like, well, okay, that's part of it. But then people will tear you down, sometimes your own friends, and they'll say, gosh, this is all messed up, and here are the errors. And I read the book, and here's the 15 different things I saw. And it's like, you didn't actually read the book. You were like my 2nd grade English teacher. Like, what in the world? And so we get worked up about what other people are thinking. Most people aren't thinking about you that much anyway. They're thinking about their own crazy, messed up lives. But we do this stuff, and we get stuck thinking about what other people think about instead of thinking about what's possible. And it's the only reason that we haven't done what's possible is because we haven't committed. I mean, you just commit. Like, I know it's very, very complicated, right? Just commit to something. Why don't we commit? Because of FOMO. We're afraid of missing out on the other opportunity that's coming around the corner. And so there's two opposing forces. One is the difference between success and super successful people is super successful people say no to almost everything. So they have a lot of space to be able to say yes. On the other side of that is you have to be willing to say yes to something and then go do it. It's not going to do it for you. And I mentioned the secret earlier. A lot of people have gotten really screwed up because they're a bunch of snowflakes that if they just will their way into it, the bag of money will fall from the sky. It's not how it works. It's like that old story where there was a flood and people were sitting there and they were waiting for help. And so somebody came by in a car and they said no, and they came by in a canoe, and then they came by in a helicopter, and then they died. And when they got to heaven, God said, what are you doing? They said, well, we were waiting for you to save us. He's like, I sent 3 different people, but you have to get off your ass and go do something. And people think that somebody else is going to do it. Maybe it's God, maybe it's the government or whatever. That is not how it works. You have got to get off your ass. And when you do that, you own the power because you're taking responsibility. Responsibility is the great differentiator. Most people are victims. And you can see it in our society. We justify, we blame, we're a victim to things, we're breaking things, we're rioting and looting. How about take some responsibility? Then you actually are free because it's all under your roof, your head. You get to choose how you interpret, you get to choose what you're doing versus, I hope they save me. I hope they send me a government check. Man, get off your ass and go make it happen. Like, we are human beings. We're not reptiles, although we use our reptilian brain and we knee-jerk react around, and our reticular activator is constantly like, okay, what's going red alert? Well, everything is going red alert. What are we doing? Turn off the damn news, turn off the feed, stop comparing ourselves to other people, compare yourself to what you're capable of. I mean, That is the greatest thing you can possibly do. Forget about what your friends, your quote unquote friends on Facebook are saying. Let's actually think about this. I know thinking is a hard thing. It's like a 4-letter word, but if we think about it, what are we capable of? Who knows? Compare yourself to yesterday. Are you making progress? That 1% is like Joel, I forget that it's like the 1% edge. There's a book and it's literally just 1%, just improve 1%. That anybody can do that. You're not going to do it if you're throwing bricks through a window, trying to destroy things, but you are capable of doing it. Anybody is, whether you're a criminal or whether you're the Dalai Lama, everybody's capable of a 1% shift. And it's a choice. It comes down to a choice. We all have that power and the same amount of time, the 168, those hours every week. Can't save them. You get to use them.
No, I think a lot of what you said is super powerful. I've always found Matthew McConaughey did that speech about like who's your idol? And it's his idol is him 10 years from today. And then 10 years later, they ask him, and no, I'm not there. It's, me in 10 years. And it's every second, every day, every minute, his future vision stays, 10 years ahead. And I thought that was really powerful because it's the same thing you're saying. It's, you're chasing your potential, and your potential is a moving target. As you grow, your potential is going to grow, and you're always chasing that future ability of what you can do. And it ties back to what you said of, when we accomplish something, that's kind of it. And like, what do you do from there? So you just continue to have loftier and loftier goals. And I think, it doesn't have to be, building, the biggest business in the world. It could be, creating more relationships or connections, or, creating deeper relationships with, the people closest to you. I think sometimes people get it too construed of like goals and things you want to do have to be like, especially when we talk in the business and investing world of like, I've got to get more units, I've got to get more money, I've got to create a bigger business. Back to your point, of more is better. I don't think that necessarily has to be the same thing, or that has to be the goal you're looking to achieve.
You're right. There's more is more. More isn't better. The question is, what is the focus? What's the reason? Like when I shifted, when I went through my whole process of reinvention, so I wrote a book called Reinvented Life back in 2012, because I was going through one hell of a reinvention. You go from 20 million to negative 5 million in 12 months. And when your entire self-worth is tied to your net worth, it's a very destructive experience. And so I went through that, and I said, okay, well, all right, what just happened? And there's phases of grief. One of them is denial. And I was definitely in denial. Like, I lost all this money, and I was like, hey, I'm still good. I got my black card until they turned it off. Couldn't buy toilet paper. That was a bummer. But, it happens. On the other side of that, after a couple of years of therapy and coaching and really asking the question, what is true? What I realized is I'm a teacher that teaches from experience, not in an ivory tower. And there's something that's more important than just me being a hedonist. And one of my friends hates when I say this, but I was a total douche. And I was like, okay, don't be a douche. Be something you're proud of, that you can look in the mirror and go, yeah, you know what? You're on the right track. Proud of you. It's really interesting. I think a lot of us would have a hard time looking in the mirror and saying, I'm really proud of you. There's no way I could have said that in the 2000s. I was in the mirror like hungover. And so totally the opposite. Nobody's proud when they're hungover. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. So there was a shift into being more thoughtful about why I'm here. And the shift was, okay, I'm here to impact other people. I'm here to help people be freer. So, because freedom to me is the ultimate. It's my most valuable virtue. It's what's most important to me, freedom. I see a lot of that being eroded, both with government and with the ideas that we have around other people saving us and the entitlement stuff. I said, okay, what can I do? And when I dug into this, I started thinking, like watching my parents retire and watching them struggle. They played by the rules and they're broke. And I went, well, this is not a good plan, but that's where most people are. So I said, okay, my mission is not about Damion getting a series of Ferraris, because if you get a Ferrari, you typically get multiples, which I did, which is stupid, but it's kind of part of the Ferrari process. And I said, okay, what is it? It's about 1 million people that I'm going to help break their financial shackles, getting them out of bondage, teaching them how to fish, helping them leverage my confidence in their ability and their potential, breaking those shackles. And most people, if we can figure out how to get them to the point where they actually believe and trust in their own ability, that's where the shackles break. It's not about handing. Somebody recently said, what if we just give everybody $1 million? Like, would that be a good idea? And I'm like, well, it's an interesting thought. If $1,000 is good, is $1 million better? And then you realize, okay, that would destroy the dollar in about 5 minutes. So maybe that's not a good idea. It also wouldn't be helpful because you would have no confidence. $1 million, it would all be vaporized. So the whole mission that I have in my life is 1 million people that have those shackles broken permanently. And when the whole reason to do that is so that people can tap into whatever they're supposed to be doing. We are not supposed to be money bees. I mean, a bee is not a money bee. It's a honeybee. Like, it has this whole process. We tend to chase money. Money is a side effect. If you go serve people, Zig Ziglar said this, if you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything you want. It happens automatically if you serve enough people, and people go like, oh, well, I can't do that because I need to go make money. I'm like, holy crap, you're a desperate zombie. And that is not what we're supposed to be doing. And quite frankly, very few people are going to starve to death. Well, how do we know? Well, take your fear down the road and say, okay, what happens if I make a mistake? What happens if I invest $20,000 and it goes away? Okay, well, nothing. Like I'm still working. Okay, what if I lose my job? Okay, well, what if I can't find any money and nobody wants to hire me and I'm stuck? Okay, I go sleep on a friend's couch. Well, then am I going to eat? Okay, here's how you eat. Go buy 50 pounds of beans and rice. And you got $100 later, you've got enough to feed you for 3 months. And then what do? Well, then you start over. Then I mean, it's, if you can take yourself all the way down through this process, you realize you're not dead. And a lot of people, they're unwilling to start because they think the boogeyman is going to kill them. When you have a big, powerful why that's serving a lot of people, all the wealth and stuff happens. It's automatically part of the process. And that's what I shifted to, was this process. And the deeper I go into that mission, the more I find ways to serve more people, the better it gets. Because more in that case is actually better. More money being the focus is just more money. And all it does is accelerate who you are. And so if you're a douche, you become a super douche when you have $1 million. Like, that's just how it is. So we have to decide what's going to drive us, what's going to pull us. Is there a North Star, or is there just fear? Sometimes fear is healthy, but we tend to stay in fear, which is screwing us all up in a lot of different ways anyway. So what's really important enough to focus on as a mission? I think that we all need that. And if we don't have it, it's time to pause and ask, what could it be?
Go ahead.
And you, like, I think that's like super powerful. I'm trying to break the financial shackles or whatever for 1 million people. Can you scorecard that? Like, is it just, how'd I help you? Oh, that's a win for me. Or is it more of an abstract of, yeah, I know that I've helped this person, whether they know it now or not, but can you scorecard that?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to scorecard it. One is to give people control and trust of their money. And so, like, when I work with people in different capacities, it's helping. It's people that understand, oh, you know what? I understand what money is. Money is energy. Money is not little dead presidents on pieces of green paper. Like, they understand that there's an energy there. So teaching people and then having them do something. So the scorecard is really seeing people shift where they do something. It's not just, oh, aha, I got it, and then I'm going to be like Mary Poppins with a bunch of unicorns. Like, it's actually going and doing something. Like, it's not just la la in the clouds. Watching people, sometimes it's literally somebody buying an ounce of silver that's real money. It's like seeing them do that or helping them through that process. And they go, oh my gosh, I'm holding real wealth. Like, this actually took energy. This is not fake. And seeing that, it's helping somebody learn how to go buy a piece of property. It's helping people get out of the Wall Street roller coaster and being able to control that retirement money. And then they go, oh, I can control it. And people are scared to freaking death. They're like, oh my gosh, I've got $600,000 in my hand. What am I supposed to do? Nobody's babysitting me. I'm like in control. They freak out. And it's, so every one of these people through their process, helping them see that it's possible and then giving them tools. I'm watching those shackles get broken, because it's the confidence by doing. And so it's not just a bunch of conjecture or a rah-rah at a seminar. Everybody feels good and they go home and they go back into their thing. It's something different. We're breaking the bondage by breaking the habits. Mm-hmm. And so it's literally doing something. When people go, well, I'm going to study. I'm like, stop studying, go do something. I don't care what you do. Go do something. It really doesn't matter what you do, because you're going to grow. And it's something y'all said earlier about, what we're going to do. Here's a good way to look at this. When we ask, what should we be doing? Ask yourself, what does a tree do? I mean, if you just look at nature has a lot of truth, because it's pure truth. It's not human frontal lobe, like talking ourselves out of things. A tree grows. How far does it grow? As far as it can, as high as it can. What humans do is we're like, okay, we're good. We're going to stop. That is not natural. Like, we should continue to grow and flourish and expand mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in our relationships until we're dead. Like, why are we stopping? Nothing in nature does that except for humans. And it's a really fascinating thing. Why do we think that we're smarter than the innate intelligence of a tree? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I think it's interesting. One thing I did want to connect and kind of bring back that I'm curious about is, a lot of people talk about when they go out and do something, whether it's a business or a venture, it's about something you should be passionate about, have joy in, whether you're making money or not. And you said, to your point, hey, you can go out and do anything, whether it's pencils or trees. Do you think it's necessary for someone, if they're going to build a business or create a venture, that it's something they're passionate about? Or is it that your passion is that higher level why, and that business or venture is a route to get to that higher level thing?
It's a great question. And there's 3 pieces to this formula. So if you want to have your passion involved in business, yes, if there is also skills and there's a market demand, and then your passion is great. We can have a business that has a great impact that we're not necessarily in love with. We can also have passions that have nothing to do with business. It doesn't mean that a business has to have, see, business is hard. I mean, you guys know this. Business is not something that's just super easy and everything works, and it's like everything breaks and everything doesn't work, at least most of the time. And, it's just like, this is part of the process. So when you're going through all this crap, one of the questions is, are you going to quit? Are you committed? And so maybe sometimes the passion is the thing you're doing, and sometimes the passion is what you're trying to accomplish big picture. What I always tell myself and other people is you want to fall in love with the process. So maybe you're not passionate. The question is, could you be passionate? A lot of times we're not passionate because our business sucks. We're not making any money. And we go, oh, this is so much work for nothing. And then we go, well, I'll ask somebody, if you were making money, if you had the outcome, would you fall in love with it? And they're like, well, I'd actually be having a good time. And I go, okay, well, can you look beyond today's income stream? Can you look out a year or 2 years and see that you're building towards that? Can you fall in love with the activities today, knowing that this is part of the process? We are so hand to mouth with our experiences where we want to have our crack hit. Like, is it feeling good? Are we getting results today? Well, sometimes you're planting seeds. We have to think about this more like farmers versus hunters. We've got to be willing to put a seed in the ground, water it, fertilize it, pull the weeds, do all that stuff over a period of time, and fall in love with that because we trust. We trust that we're on this in the middle of this process. If we don't trust it, then we look for immediate results, and the immediate results prevent us from building anything that's actually great. So yes, I think passion is important. You can find passion if you have a big enough, powerful enough mission for what you're doing. I mean, you think about like a pencil or a brick. Some people look at those and they go, well, I'm just making pencils. Actually, maybe, what you're doing is you're helping to write the next Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights. You're helping to write the next screenplay, the next Shakespearean piece. That's what you're helping when you make a pencil. Other people go, I'm making a bunch of wood with lead. Like, it's how you look at what you're doing. Is it impactful? Or, is that brick just a brick? Are you making bricks for the sake of bricks? Or are you building the next cathedral or somebody's home for their family? Like, are you part of that? When you can put yourself into that space, you can fall in love with almost anything.
I love that.
It's how it was. That was beautifully said, but it's the same thing. It's not, it's how you look at it. It's not taking it for what it is, right? Because like I said, the pencil analogy, the brick analogy is the perfect way to put it. You're providing something for someone to do something with. When you take that perspective, it's a lot different than, here you go, take it, right? And that's you could fall in love with that, as opposed to, I hate going to work and just stuffing lead and pieces of wood. Like that is hard to fall in love with. But if there's a passion behind that or something, underlying truth or goal or whatever it is, that's how you can turn anything into a passionate, love for.
And you, Chris, your question, do you need passion for it? I think if you don't have passion, if you're just going through motions, that you're a zombie. So we need to find passion. You can create passion if you see a bigger picture for anything that you're doing. I mean, it's truly possible. You don't have to say, okay, what am I passionate about? You can find passion in anything. Mm-hmm. It's a very big difference for people because they're like, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I know, what am I excited about? Just pick something and then reconstruct how you look at it. And oh my gosh, the energy fires up because you realize it actually makes a difference for people and for the planet. Like, it can really change anything you're doing. And it's how you choose. It's not, one of the things people say is it's happening to me, like whatever it is, pandemic, or you lost a job, or things happen. And instead of saying it's happening to me or it happened to me, or why is it happening to me? A better question is, how is this happening for me? Why is this happening for me? And then you start to, your brain shifts. It's like when Robert Kiyosaki said years ago, I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He said, look, stop saying I can't afford things. Ask the question, how can I afford this? And it changes your brain. Your brain goes in and starts creating stuff because our brain is this supercomputer. You have the input potential, but we're blowing it because we're asking the wrong questions.
It's funny you bring that up because I was literally in the shower this morning, and something Chris doesn't even know this yet, and Don doesn't know this yet, and no one that works for us knows. But one thing I wanted to start doing, like quarterly or every, what are you looking to accomplish? Making sure that those visions align quarterly, semi-annually. Just what do you want out of what you're doing? I want those answers as a company, as a team, as everyone, because if for whatever reason at some point you don't want the same thing or something's changed and I can't help you get there, then I'd be the first to say, hey, ride this out for as long as you'd like, and or let's ask a different question to get that vision aligned. Because we're putting together something right now that I think is a great first step for what we want to accomplish. But I think it's just funny we have this, this conversation today. It's something I was literally speaking about this morning. I started writing it down. I was working out and I was like, okay, how can I implement this to change, the vision, right? Because some days it's, what the fuck did he ask that question for? He's not doing his job, or what the fuck, this person wants that person wants that. But it's like, okay, let's get all that negative bullshit out. And how could we implement the right things? It's like, okay, we're working towards the same goal here, or what goal can I help you work towards to get there? And that's something that I was literally going to have a conversation with everybody. We're coming up halfway through 2020, right? We're 30 days away or whatever. It's a great time to ask that question. What do you want? How do we get there? We have 6 months to accomplish it this year. Let's make positive steps to do that, as opposed to, wow, this isn't working. He sucks at his job. This person sucks. This person's not doing their thing. I don't have money. I'm complaining. That's all great, but those are excuses for the real problem. It's forget that. Let's work going forward as opposed to going back and talking about crap in the past.
That's a big shift. And one of the things one of my coaches told me years ago, his name is Michael Coffey, and we would talk about our quarterly stuff, our quarterly goals. So we'd be in, the end of quarter 2, which is where we are now talking. And if we were talking right now, he would say, okay, what are we doing in Q1 2021? What is the goal then? And then we would be thinking 2 quarters ahead. I mean, there are cultures like in China and Japan that'll think 100 years ahead. And yet, what do we do in America? It's a quarterly mentality. Everything is quarterly. It's all based on this Wall Street system. Every 3 months. Okay, I get it. 3 months is really important. 13-week cash type of controls. All these things are important. When you look out and you say like 6 months out and you say, okay, what's the goal for the beginning of 2021? It allows you to say, okay, we're going to focus on putting a lot of seeds in the ground, tilling the soil, going back to gardening. If you haven't noticed, I'm kind of into gardening. I just have my first big garden and it's making me super happy. Just watching the stuff grow. Like I go out there and overnight a zucchini pops out of nowhere and I'm like, oh my gosh, a strawberry happens. And it's like the second coming of Christ. I'm like, oh, it's so exciting. And so if we can think about it in those terms, it takes the pressure off of us saying, okay, what do I sell to somebody this week? And it doesn't mean we don't sell something this week. It means that we can start building something and investing our time and energy into something for the future versus always being hand to mouth. We get way too into that because it's the survival mode. It's the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This, I'm going to die. I've got to feed myself. I've got to go hunt something. We are more evolved unless we're not. And so question is, which one are you going to be? You get to choose. Do you want to be somebody that's like, I've got to eat today or I'm going to die? Or somebody that's thinking about 2021 and you're going to chalk up 2020 to one of those very weird years of a lot of stuff. And the second half is going to be all about the planting, not the CNN that you kept brain damaging you for the first half of 2020. Like there's really a question. What are we going to do with the next half? It's kind of like waking up at 40 years old and realizing that you're broke, you're homeless, you're a mess, healthy. Okay, great. So what are you going to do the next half? Like you can't fix that last half, or you're playing a basketball game and it's halfway through the game and it's 95-2 and you're losing. Are you going to win the game? No. Question is, how are you going to play the second half?
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about right now. We're almost there. So how are you going to play the second half of 2020? So it really matters. Think about 2021. How do you want to start it? Right now is the time to prep for it.
Yep. I agree. That's why I was thinking about it this morning. And I just said, who knows what happens the rest of this year, right? We're in a totally different, no one knows, right? It's something that we've never experienced before. 1918 maybe, but none of us were around. You could read history and all that stuff, but inevitably you got to look past this and say, okay, what are we going to do? We could bitch and moan and complain today like everybody else. We can throw bricks through windows and we can stand on front lines with masks on and bitch and moan. And I get it. And I don't have any problem with people doing that. Well, I do, but be that as it may. Or you can step back and say, okay, let's fix tomorrow, or let's fix 6 months from now, or let's fix 5 years from now. Let's build that today. And I think it's just an approach that if more people did, and if you lost something, you could say, okay, yeah, I'm not the best. I don't need a trophy. I don't need to be a pussy, as you said it earlier. And I could not agree more. it's, wow, that really sucked. I don't want that. I don't want that feeling again. What do I have to do to change it? Or if you're okay with that, that's fine too. But think about the future and 6 months from now, because this is a weird year. It's just one of those years. So I agree, and it just coincidentally, there was no planning to it. I didn't even know how this conversation was going to go, but I think it was just really important to say, and I think it's something that everyone should be doing today. Setting up for the future.
Yeah, I think at the beginning we said we do a lot of things wrong, but I think one of the things we probably did right was, as this started, we kind of said, hey, we're probably not buying a deal for the next, several months. We probably thought it was shorter than it's, going to end up being, but we just said, let's start working on the other things that we can work on. Like, we can't control that there's a pandemic and, every single deal fell off the market and there's nothing to buy. So it's like, okay, what can we control? And we just took a hard look at a lot of our internal processes, things we put by the wayside, and just said, hey, this is an opportunity, not a loss, but how do we capitalize on this opportunity? And it was a lot of things that we had not spent time on that we probably should have, but for various reasons didn't, and just used it as that time to work on them and grow that part and build that part of the business that, maybe doesn't bring in revenue tomorrow, doesn't grow the business on paper tomorrow, doesn't show up, on different avenues that people can quantify and see. But I guarantee if we had just sat here and done nothing, or, continue to do what we're doing, when Q1 2021 rolls around, we'll be in a much better position going forward for, when deal flow does start coming up again.
Guys, one of the things that people will ask me right now, because they're thinking, a lot of friends and colleagues and people that pay attention, that maybe listen to Financial Underdogs, my show, they'll say, what am I supposed to do now? Because I'm not doing deals and I'm waiting. And I go, well, here's the thing. What if you had you've been doing houses or apartments? What if you had a $50 million deal that showed up tomorrow and it was amazing? Would you be ready for it? And people say, yeah. And I go, no, you wouldn't, because your context, the way that you look at the world, your world purview is not ready for it yet. And so what do you do to get ready so that you can actually do that? Because most people, this is why people win the lottery and then they get rid of it and they go bankrupt 2-3 years later, because their context, who they are, is not ready for it. So what do? It's called R&D. It's reinvent and develop yourself. You spend time and money and energy between now and when that deal comes so that you're actually ready to hold it. You've got to go to the gym. It's your mental and emotional and spiritual gym to get ready for that space, instead of saying, well, I'm just waiting for the deal. A lot of people are going to be waiting for the deal, and then the deal is going to crush them. Like, they're just not going to be able to do it. So what do? You invest in yourself. People say, what do I invest in? I go, your R&D, your personal development. And they go, yeah, isn't that a bunch of woo? And I'm like, woo is you. Like, let's go. Like, you've got to shift you. If you see things like, there are people that consistently do $100 million deals, $500 million, $1 billion deals. It's normalized. Those deals are not normal for most people listening to this program. It wouldn't be for me. If you gave me $1 billion deal, I would like deer in the headlights. I don't know what to do here. Because I don't know how I could wire $1 billion. I don't know if I could actually push the button, because I'm not there yet. And I mean, I'm being very honest. When I had that first $25,000 check that I kind of made up, I was like, holy crap, this is just about the amount of money that my parents made in a year. And I made this in 5 minutes. I was expanding. That was my personal context. It got to the point where it was hundreds of thousands, then millions. Then I was like, okay, I'm doing millions a month, and that became normal. So, but $1 billion, for some people, that's what they move around every day. Like, it's just normal. That's their job. Mm-hmm. And so part of this process is saying, okay, how can I develop my own ability to handle the bigger opportunities that are coming? Because if you don't get ready for that, if you don't stretch yourself out, you're going to snap when it actually comes in. You literally won't be molded and ready. It's like trying to deadlift 800 pounds when right now you can barely bench press 50. Yep. Like, it's not going to work. You're going to strain yourself and break your back.
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed a lot as I've been in the larger multifamily, medium-sized multifamily space for a number of years. It's, we talk about 10, 20, 30, 50, $40 million deals all the time. And it's just normal to us. And when we talk to people who are newer or through social media, internet, friends and family, I'm talking about numbers that are unfathomable to them. But for me, because I've come up from doing the first deal John and I ever worked on together was an 8 unit that cost like, I don't know, $400,000 or something like that. I've moved up from there to the $40 million deal. I can see the connections between the two. It's 80%, 90% the same thing from an 8-unit property to a 800-unit property or 300-unit property. For me, it's easy to see, but when I'm talking about it, because to your point, they're not in it, they don't experience it, they can't understand how that all works. It just seems crazy. And obviously you can just continue to extrapolate it up and up and up. So I understand that completely.
And this is a process. I mean, you don't start at 300 or 400 or 800 units. You have to, people that try to start there, they go from wherever they are to that and no experience. It's daunting. And what we find is there's a lot of pretenders. A lot of people will talk about big deals, but they've barely signed their name on a check, let alone a mortgage for $40 million. And so when it actually comes down to doing something, it's just freezing, paralysis. There is a process of going through this. It doesn't mean you have to do a house and then a duplex and a fourplex and an eightplex. It just means a lot of times we don't have any skills or any emotional intelligence around doing any of this stuff. So when people say, what am I supposed to do? I really want to do these big projects. Great. But go do something, get the ball going, because it is a very hard leap to go from 0 to 50 million. Like that is, it's just, and when people do that, what I see them doing is they tend to be really terrible investors because they're so nervous about I don't know what's happening and my money's there and I don't know who's dealing with it. And they make monumental mistakes. So what is one of the greatest things there are two things that I tell everybody to do. And when I tell you guys listening, you guys here, Chris and John, I'm telling myself, make sure you always have a mentor that's bald or grayer than you, and make sure you always have a bookkeeper giving you real-time data on your numbers. Always. No exception to this, because you can't see yourself swing. You'll do things that are emotional, that are stupid, that you're not even noticing. And if you can't see your numbers, if you don't actually know what's going on, then you don't have any clarity. And clarity is where you get power. Numbers don't lie. They tell a story about truth, about your behaviors, about what's really going on. You can make up a story about anything if you don't have your numbers, which is why most people don't have their numbers, personal and business. They'd rather just think they know what the numbers are, and then they feel better. When the numbers actually tell you that your deal is going bad or that it's stupid, we want to justify what we're doing. And so oftentimes if we ignore the numbers, we can easily justify it. The numbers will tell us a different story. So those two things are the two primary people that every single person that's serious should always have in their life from day one to day end.
Yeah,
Love it.
No, I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, super helpful. I also think that's a fantastic place to wrap it up. Damion, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a ton of insights, mindset, experiences, etc. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, follow you, where can they do all that stuff?
You guys got to come to Financial Underdogs. You can hit me up, Damion at Financial Underdogs. The podcast is weekly. And if you want to be part of the David versus Goliath experiment, breaking free of these shackles, that's where I live, man. That's where my work is. You want more raw truth, you want more nugget bombs or whatever I've got, that's where you're going to find it.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you are not already subscribed, it would mean the world to John and I if you would. And if you already are, it would also be great if you would send it to a friend, colleague, coworker that you think would get a tremendous amount of value from it. And just so you also know, we just launched a Facebook group that I think would be very helpful to a lot of people. It'll give us a way to connect with you, get some feedback, help each other out. You can find it by going to Facebook and searching the Real Estate Investing Experience and joining there. We look forward to having you in. Once again, Damion, thank you so much for coming on. It was tremendous.
Yeah, Chris, John, thanks for having me. You guys for listening. I appreciate the opportunity, and go out there and do something, please, for the love of you and humanity.